All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining us for Fiesta Friday. We got a great show for you tonight. A supersized version of House to Home awaits you. That's coming up later on the show, plus Kultura Parang Ratu, where you can learn something about a unique way to celebrate island culture. But first, our friends at the Guam Humanities Council have been hosting several events relative to Black History Month, because it is, of course, February. And to tell us all about it, our executive director, our good friend, Dr. Kimberlee Kihleng, and Moneka Flores. Moneka, I hope we'll be calling you Dr. Moneka some point in the future.
I hope so too.
Yeah, you're only gonna have to, like, get yourself highly into debt and do the whole dissertation thing. But
right.
Other than that, piece of cake.
Yeah, maybe in 20 years. Check me out again.
No, not that long.
All right. Well, obviously the work that you both do, doctoral or otherwise, is very much appreciated for celebrating culture. And of course, with this being Black History Month, what are you working on this month?
Well, actually, we're working on several things. We're focusing on two projects generally. The first was actually launched back in September. It's called Created Equal, the American Civil Rights Struggle. It's an NEH initiative that uses the power of documentary film to explore the principles of equality and freedom in American society, focused obviously on the civil rights movement from the 1830s all the way up into the 1960s. So we feature 4 films. And we started off back in September with Freedom Riders, and there was a band of activists in 1961 who really were opposed to busing and the segregation of busing and wanted to desegregate the buses. So they went to the South, both blacks and whites, to protest that. We showed that film, and we had Dr. Robert Underwood, who facilitated the conversation around that, with the Birmingham Sunlights, who are here from Birmingham, Alabama, as part of a council project entitled Eat Your Heritage, Freedom on the Menu. We then showed the film, The Loving Story, about Richard and Mildred Loving, which looked at interracial marriage and the important Supreme Court decision that struck down anti-miscegenation laws. And we featured attorney Bill Pesh, who really brought it relevant to the Guam context and today's current civil rights struggle, which is around same-sex marriage and marriage equality. And most recently, we've been showing The Evolutionist, which is a 3-part series of videos looking at the early anti-slavery activists in the 1830s up until the Civil War. And we've showed that as part of our journey stories. And then we will be featuring the final film in the series, Slavery by Another Name, next week, Thursday, February 26th at 6:30. And we are really fortunate to have human rights attorney Julian Uggan, who will be giving a brief presentation and then facilitating discussion afterwards.
All right, so a full slate of activities and
yes.
Lots of educational opportunities.
Yes.
And that leads me to my next question, Moneka, because from your point of view and being someone who interacts with a lot of the local community, not only on preparing all this research and the material to be presented to them, but then also getting their feedback and kind of getting a pulse for how people receive it. Based on your work, how does the current generation, what's their level of knowledge about the civil rights movement, especially from the 60s?
Right. Well, the way the civil rights history is taught and the way we talk about it, it's very different than how it's sort of taught and talked about in the States. And so, we really want to get people to think about the relevance of civil rights history to our own civil rights struggles here on Guam as a territory, to some of the issues in the region. And we've been able to link up, as Kim was mentioning, with some really great scholars and experts to expand that conversation and get people to kind of relate to it in a local context. But two, I mean, it's very timely. We're going on just over the 50th anniversary of some of the most important moments in civil rights history, the march from Selma to Montgomery, the bombing of the church in Birmingham, and all of these events which really reshaped the nation. And we're dealing with what's really known as the shame of the nation. And it's really important that people of all colors, of all backgrounds get together to talk about this, because this is really everybody's history, and we can really relate with a lot of the political struggles here on Guam to the civil rights struggles and the civil rights history. And with this great film that we're showing next week, a lot of people don't know that slavery didn't end with the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War. People just the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and slavery was ended and everyone was free, but actually the 13th Amendment has a clause that that slavery could still be used as a punishment for crime, and so several African Americans were imprisoned and put to work in even more dangerous and treacherous situations because they were prisoners. And so that's what this film talks about, and this system of penal forced labor actually carries on until right before World War II.
And that kind of is the very glaring and very humiliating hypocrisy of our country, because it's touted as the land of opportunity, and yet we've got this long history of pretty extreme prejudice and everything. Mm-hmm. Now, before we go to commercial, we want to tell people how they can check this out, but also can locals and can kids who grow up here really put it into the context of understand what Black Americans have gone through, like historically and everything? Because out here, there's, you talk about like racial prejudice and like race relations and everything like that. The problems we have out here certainly pale by comparison to what's felt in the States, where you have that level of intensity.
Well, we try to do different things. The film and discussion series is one thing. We're also doing Family Story Hour, and tomorrow we're having a great Family Story Hour. It's actually a part of the Journey Stories exhibit and the Sandalo exhibit that's up right now at Agania Shopping Center right across National Office Supply. And tomorrow at 1 o'clock we're going to have a Family Story Hour where parents and youth of all ages we're going to read a book, Child of the Civil Rights Movement. It's a way to really relate and engage younger audiences with this history that is very difficult to talk about. And we're going to have a fantastic performance and presentation by the Anderson Air Force Base Gospel Choir. They're going to help teach some protest songs and perform some protest songs. And then we're going to have another story hour next Saturday, where we're going to read the book Moses, how Harriet Tubman led her people to freedom. So we try different approaches. It is definitely a difficult struggle for people to talk about and to get young people to comprehend. I still can't comprehend how slavery existed. When you really look at this dark history, it's like, how did people think they could own other people? But it happened. And so we're talking about everything from slavery to the Underground Railroad to the Civil Rights Movement, and of course to issues now. And so we're trying to do that in many different ways, with the film and discussion, with the story hours. So we really want people to try to come and take advantage of all the programs we're doing this month.
All right, now Kim, is there an extended calendar online where people can see?
Yes, you can go to our website at www.guamhumanitiescouncil.org, and you can get all the information. We have a great Facebook page that updates you regularly every day on the events that are happening for the week and into the future. So just join us on Facebook.
Fantastic. Ladies, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, and we will be back right after this.